Today I've got a very special guest, one of our truly appreciated team members, Team Man Tanner. How are you going, my friend?
Yeah, not bad.
That's good.
Thanks for asking.
So you're going to be shooting me some questions from a Gen Z point of view on, property investing and what it's like for Gen Z people.
Yeah, okay. Thanks for having me on, Dean. I really
Welcome,
appreciate
mate.
this
Very
opportunity.
welcome.
So just wanted to ask you a few quick questions that I think that I've heard a lot in passing at gatherings when I tell people what I do for work.
Yes.
And people around my age group.
Yep.
And I've heard a lot of things come up, and some questions like, why sort of, take that risk at such a young age and taking on such significant debt when investing in property. Is that really the right thing to do at this time of their careers and their lives? And it seems as though a lot of people think it's too risky, just because they're like, oh, what if it goes bad? Then we lose everything. Yeah. So how would you sort of, handle that?
Look, with property, there are risks, of course. With everything that we do, there's risks. I think the key thing is, how do you mitigate those risks? I guess one of the biggest people think would be a risk for property would be if it's affordable. Are they going to be able to afford a property? Yeah. Because if they can't and they lose deposits or they lose their investment, then they've lost, time and money. Yeah. So if the property itself was capable of looking after itself, for example, financially, so if the rent can cover the loan, the expenses and all the outgoings, then that's one way of mitigating that risk. Yeah. What other risks have you heard of?
A lot of people mention, interest rates that are rising
up.
And also, sometimes natural disasters and things like that come about. So those are some of the reasons that people get turned off.
Natural disasters is definitely something that we can't really help, of course. Yeah. But rising interest rates, yes, costs might go up for your loan. So I think it's very important that if you can have a buffer in place to make sure that you can account for things going up, then that's one way to mitigate risk. I think the key thing is, it's a lot of people can see something as risky, but there's also the other side of the ability to mitigate that risk. So when you know that there's a lot of people doing it, that means that it's possible. So it's more about educating yourself and figuring out what are those risks, how can they be, how can you account for those risks, and then they'll find that those feelings will seem to dwindle down, because I had that feeling a little bit. There's risks to buying the property, but when I have the right people around me and the right information, you can soon see that it's not as risky as you might think when you have the right plans in place to mitigate those risks. Another
Question that typically, or something that comes up when discussing this topic, is the ethical side of things, where a lot of people find that it's unethical for people to own more than one property, right? So they say it's greedy, it's you're pushing the prices up, you're not making it affordable for everyday Aussies, and that's why they prefer to invest in other things like shares, where there isn't that impact on other people within society. So these are things that I hear.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a little bit of a different viewpoint to that. One thing, when you're a property investor, particularly if you're building a new house, so Australia has a housing crisis at the moment, and we don't have enough homes. So if an investor is purchasing a brand new property, then they're actually helping with the housing shortage. Another thing is they're giving more homes and more availability to people who are renting. Yeah. So if there's more rentals available, that means that the price for rent should drop. because there's more supply. So another thing that's really big for me is I want to look after my family and I want to look after my community, right? I believe as long as you're doing this with the right intention, then I don't see it as greedy, because I want to look after my family. I want to make sure that they're taken care of, right? Yeah. How hard is it going to be for children to purchase their first property? It's going to be extremely difficult with the way the housing pricing is going. Yeah. So if I'm capable of giving my kids a good future and they become better citizens and they become individuals who are capable of contributing to society in a better way, then I think that's a great thing, because they're going to have better education, better schooling, better health, and that's what we should be promoting. Yeah. I can kind of understand it a little bit from the other side of things, or it may appear to be greedy, and maybe there are people that are greedy, that are just keeping all the money for themselves and they're not looking to do anything else with it. But I think it's very important to look after your family. First of all, look after yourself, look after your family, look after the community, and if you can become a big if you have the ability to look after people, then that's not a bad thing. Yeah. And someone that doesn't have the financial capacity to do that can't look after themselves or can't look after the others. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. If you have other opinions or thinking something else, go ahead and say it about that topic.
No, I think the way that, when I've had these conversations with people and they've discussed the ethical aspect of it, I think their concern was that mainly that, the more investors there are purchasing all the properties in the market, it pushes the prices up, and then it prices people out of getting their first home, not even as an investment, but just to live in. Yeah. So that's the angle that they were coming from. Yeah. But personally, as you said, looking after your family is of the utmost importance, and like making sure that you...
I think it's true though, to a point. I don't really agree fully with overseas investing. I think Australia should look after Australia first, and make it easier for first home buyers to actually be able to purchase a property if they want. It's not very fair that it's so out of reach for a lot of people. So I don't know what that would take, but I don't think it's very fair for overseas investors to potentially cause the first home owners to not be able to purchase a home if that's driving up the housing prices. Yeah.
Okay. On another topic, right? So personally myself, when I first heard about super, I was like 14 when I started my first job, right? Yeah. And I just asked someone, hey, what's this super stuff? And they're like, oh, it's like when you were 65, it's something to, look after yourself. And I thought, 14, 65, that's like 50 years at least, right? Till I get there. Yeah. So I was like, oh, stuff it, I don't care. Just put down whatever. Yeah. So like, even as I got older and I started having more jobs, I didn't really care about my super. I never really thought about it, because I had no idea what you could actually do with super or why it's important, because that was a later problem, right?
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Like when I'm like 50 or, like mid 50s, I'll worry about retirement and what I need to do.
And that's still the mindset of the older generation. They're just coming up to that age now, and then they say, oh, I should probably do something about this now. Yeah. So yeah, go on.
That's it. And that's why I wanted to ask, like, how important is it for, people just entering into the workforce or starting their first careers, or, just starting to get paid some super? How important is it to, look at how you can use that to invest in the future? What are some things that people can do,
so
from an early age?
Super for me is... I've always been self-employed, so I have not contributed super to the standard way, or to the way that trend that I have found when I have asked clients in the past of how much do you have in super, and they'll tell me the amount,
Yeah.
and I say, how much have you worked? How long have you worked for? They tell me how long they've worked for, and then I ask them for the average income.
Yeah.
And basically, what you find is their contributions over those years of working are the total of their super.
Yeah.
So their super actually has not really grown or done anything. And it's basically just been a savings account for them. And like you said before, no one really looks at that because it's just something that is set in the background. It's set and forget.
Yeah.
So I think it's very important to at least understand and learn about it,
Yeah.
and figure out how it's performing and working for you. And, you know, there are definitely other options and things that you can do with your super.
Yeah.
So investigate and see what you can do, because I believe that you can do much better things than the standard way of how it's working currently.
If you could summarize in one sentence what the most important things someone of my generation or Gen Z should do towards working towards property investment, what would that be? What would you say to them?
Well, I think the focus would have to be on yourself and becoming more valuable in your career, so you can earn, you know, a good income. And because if it's your first investment property, that's typically the hardest one. Yeah. So you're going to need to save for a deposit, or if there's some other way that you can, you know, get help from mum or dad or something like that. Maybe they have equity lying around, or maybe they have super, and you can join them in a super fund to purchase an investment property and contribute to that. But I think the typical way would be just to, become more valuable in the workplace, learn skills, learn about property, learn about investing, educate yourself, and you know, as soon as you have the possibility to do it and it makes sense for you and your position, pull the trigger as soon as you can, because the time in the market is the most important thing. The longer you can hold the property for, the higher the chance that you are of having a property that's going up in value. So that would be my tip.
Nice. What about rentvesting? What do you think about rentvesting?
I love rentvesting.
Yeah.
I don't own my own property that I live in just yet.
Yeah.
I think that it depends on the person and their circumstances. You know, I don't have any children at the moment. Maybe if I had children and I wanted to live in a particular place and I didn't want to move from that place, that's fine. But I'm very mobile at the moment. I just think that I can put my money into a property that's not costing me any money whatsoever, and I can do that time and time and time again, and I can live in a better area for less than what it would cost me for the mortgage of that property. Yeah. So I prefer to have the lifestyle with a cheaper cash flow, outgoing cash flow, and also invest in the background. As long as I'm in the market and I have property that's going up in value, it's a no-brainer for me and my situation.
Yeah.
Nice.
And what are your thoughts about, you know, investing in a property that's, let's say, interstate or somewhere that you've never seen, never been to?
Yeah. Well, my first property was in Queensland.
Yeah.
I live in New South Wales.
Yeah.
And it just made more sense for me because number one, I could afford it. The housing market was cheaper in Queensland at the time. The rent was much stronger. So the rent's taking care of all the outgoing expenses. And as long as you have a good team around you, good a good managing agent to manage the property, to manage the tenants, manage all of the expenses, it's very easy. And I love it because I don't have to worry about it. So I know a lot of people want to buy in their suburb, and that's because they're comfortable and they know it. But it's not necessarily the best move, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Weren't you scared though? Like, you haven't seen this property, you've never been there.
No. Maybe for me it's a little bit different because I've been helping people do this for a long time.
Yeah.
But for me, not really. I mean, Queensland's only a short flight if I really need to go there. And what am I going to do? And, you know, if the tenants trash the place, you know, just because they're next. It actually caused me more stress if my tenants were next door, because I'd be probably looking over the fence, seeing what they're doing. Are they damaging something, or what's going on? So
Having a big
for
party.
me, it's set and forget.
Yeah.
If I really needed to go there for any reason, I can get on a plane. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see. And I've heard a lot of people talk about like different types of investments in relation to property. So some of them are NDIS, some of them are defense contracts, and some of them are Airbnbs and stuff, so short-term rentals.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on those? Like,
for me,
which one's the
I
best?
personally don't know too much about NDIS, so I just stick to what I understand and what I know. The Airbnb, for me, I see that as just another business, and people are time poor as it is. So if you have time to manage that on your own, or however that works, then that's fine. It may work. Yeah. My personal goal is just to have things that are set and forget and easy and don't require my time, because for me, my time is my biggest asset, and I just want it to be nice and easy. Yeah. I think NDIS will have its place. Defense housing will have its place. Airbnb will have its place. It depends on the individual and what they're looking to achieve, really. Yeah. But a lot of people see this as quicker and easier money.
Yeah.
They think it's a get rich quick or get rich quick kind of thing, but I don't think it is, and I think that there's pros and cons to each investment method, and you just have to be aware of what they are and choose the one that works for you.
So going back to shares and versus property in investment. So if you had, let's say, $100,000 in savings, if you were to invest it in shares, the return that people say it's typically around 10% annually, as opposed to property, where the median average is about 6%, right? For growth.
Yeah.
So why would someone not invest in property, but
for me,
or the other way?
Look, shares, you're investing in companies, right? And you're investing in things. It's paper. It's not a physical thing. Where a house is something where someone has to live, and that will never go away. People always need a place to live. So, again, I don't personally understand shares fully, and that's why I don't invest in it. Yeah. But I know that people need a house to live in. I know that that will always be, and I just think it's much safer. I think it's something that's maybe easier to manage, unless you have someone managing the shares for you, then that may be fine. But yeah, I truly believe that property is just easier, simpler, and it's something that's always going to be in demand. It's and less risky.
Yeah.
Shares have been very volatile as well. I think the biggest strong point is people need a place to live.
Yeah, fair enough.
And that will never go away.
The only thing I've heard about shares that people talk about is that there's no risk involved. So the money that you put in, whether it goes up or down, it's not tied to your personal assets. So, and that's a big fear for a lot of people, that like, hey, if the investment property goes down, the market goes down, the interest rates go up, or something happens, then that will come back to bite your own occupier, the place that you live in as well.
Well,
and you lose everything.
If your investment property price goes down, I mean, you haven't lost money unless you sold it, right? So if you're capable of holding onto the property through that rough cycle by making sure that rent covers as much of the outgoings as possible, making sure you have a buffer, then the property market going down isn't necessarily a significant thing if you can ride it out. If you're forced to sell it, then that may be a different scenario, but as long as you're set up in the correct way, you should not need to be forced to sell the property. That's the whole point. The whole point is to hold on to the property for at least 7-10 years plus. Whereas we've had global financial crisis, and I have a personal friend of my dad's lost hundreds and hundreds of $1,000s in their super. That's shares. So, and when it's his time to retire, which it was, what's he going to do then?
Yeah,
he's screwed.
Too late.
Absolutely screwed.
Yeah.
So I think I don't think property will have that type of volatility, and I think that property is a safer bet, in my opinion.
Yeah. But can they come after your house, your personal assets, if something was to go wrong with the investment property?
But what are you talking about in terms of going wrong with the investment?
Let's say, I don't know, you lose your tenant.
Yep.
You know, interest rates keep going up.
Yep.
And then
yeah. So losing tenants
can't hold on to it.
You have to ask the question of why would you lose tenants?
Yeah.
Okay. So first of all, that would start with the purchase of the property and where it is, because if there's a strong rental demand for people to live in this certain area, then you shouldn't have that problem.
Right.
But if you're in an area that maybe, you know, mining towns, this happens, right? So there's a demand because people are working in the mines, and then they shut down the mining town, and then all of a sudden there's no one living there anymore.
Yeah.
But if you're, you know, investing next to a CBD where there's a lot of work, a lot of infrastructure, schools, hospitals, all these types of things that people need and people want, then there's a stronger rental demand, which means that it's less likely of a chance that tenants will not be in your property.
So
Right?
So the location's obviously important.
Location's definitely a big factor for that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
To make sure that doesn't happen. Nice.
And
What
then-
about regional versus metro? Like,
I think that's one of the.
there's always
I think
debates
that's the
about
same argument really with the tenants, right? I think how many people want to live rural versus how many people want to live in a city. What's the population? What kind of infrastructure is there in the rural area? What kind of opportunities? What kind of jobs? What kind of amenities? And that will really dictate if it's a good place to be. I'm sure that there are good rural areas, but you just have to, you know, do the research and figure out, you know, is that place, does that rural area have government spending potentially in the future? You know, does that rural area have good schools, a good hospital, and so forth? But if you're telling me somewhere where there may not be any of those amenities or facilities and money being spent by the government, then I think it will be more likely to not have tenants in that property and give you that problem that you were saying.
So what about, you know, new properties versus something that's a little bit older, that's established? I've heard people say, hey, you could buy an older house, do some renos, you'll, you know, be able to purchase it for slightly less than something that's new. And I just don't really know which one's a better way to go about it.
It all, again, falls down to the individual. Now, if you have time to do a reno and research for that and handle tradies and everything else that comes with renovations, then you know what, that might be for you. But for me personally, like I said, I like the set and forget. So a new house for me, I've got builder's warranty. I have other pros like depreciation. The depreciation is much higher on newer builds, so I want to get a lot of tax back. So yeah, it just depends really. And another thing with a new property, a lot of people love newer style properties as well, so it may rent a little bit easier or you attract a better tenant. The older properties, I don't see it as a major issue, but if you have the time to renovate and do all those things, then great. But for me personally, I like to put all of my focus into my main thing, and then anything that comes from that income wise, I just put it to property that can look after itself. There's no repairs, no maintenance, there's no surprises, and it's just less headaches for me, in my opinion.
Yeah, fair enough.
Because if you buy a property that's that is old and you don't do your research properly and you find issues with that property, it could, you know, that could be a big bill.
Yeah, that's
also.
right.
So that's just my take on it.
Yeah, some hidden costs that might come up later. Like I used to live in a share house, and there was big problems with the roof.
Yeah.
So the owner of the house, he bought the place because it's fairly cheap, and he's like, "Yeah, I got a good deal."
Yeah,
As
seems like a good deal.
Going through the house, we one night we had a massive thunderstorm,
Wow.
and it's just like leaking all over the kitchen.
Yeah, there you go.
Went up there, he had a look, and he's like, "Oh, the roof's fucked."
Yeah.
It had this really big, like, metal tank. So some of the older houses, they used to have the water tanks inside the roof cavity.
Yeah.
And he's like, he got some quotes to see how much it would cost to repair and fix everything, and he's just like, nah, we'll just live with the leaks.
There you go.
So
And then
like,
what tenants are going to want to live in that?
Exactly, right.
So
yeah,
absolutely, mate. And, you know, we were talking about risks before. That's just one of the risks that may come with purchasing a
But would that not come up in a, like, let's say a home and build and pest inspection when you
would hope so.
You'd hope so.
But there's also people who aren't very competent at their jobs. Maybe they might miss it.
Yeah.
So
thanks, Dean. Thanks for having me on.
no worries, Mr. T-Man. Thanks for the questions.
That's
Appreciate
all right.
it. And I
That's
hope
all right.
we've given some people and some Gen Z some insights to investing and
Yeah.
awesome.
Perfect.
Thanks, mate.
All right.